Good evening and welcome to the 15th annual dinner presentation of the Manhattan Institute Social Entrepreneurship Awards. I'm Howard Husick, the Institute's Vice President for Research and Publications and Director of our Social Entrepreneurship Initiative. This is the evening each year when we recognize those who have decided, in the face of the social problems that we see in our country, that they are the ones who should and can do something to help, and that they have a new and better way to do so. They are the founders and leaders of organizations that offer new models of reaching and uplifting those in need. At a time when public doubt about the effectiveness of government is high, they remind us that there are many sources of good ideas in America, especially our vibrant civil society. All have relied crucially on private philanthropy to fuel their work, and all who have been nominated by members of their own communities who know their work firsthand. Tonight you'll see that issues that seem to challenge and perplex us are being effectively approached by the winners of our awards. They're helping our veterans find a new sense of purpose, helping to improve the health of poor children, helping new immigrants realize their economic potential, and training a new generation of teachers with the skills to uplift the most disadvantaged students. As seems to happen every year, we find that social problems that have taken center stage suddenly in the public have already been recognized by social entrepreneurs. I think here of two award winners we'll introduce tonight who are helping prisoners and the newly released build new lives. And, as represented by our grand prize, Simon Prize winner, the recognition of the crying need for high-quality teachers, the highest quality teachers, to serve the most disadvantaged students. As always, I won't step on any more applause lines. As always, we'll present two types of awards: the $25,000 Richard Cornell Prizes for promising new organizations, named for Dick Cornell, the libertarian intellectual and longtime friend of the Manhattan Institute, author of the landmark book Reclaiming the American Dream, in which he coined the term independent sector to describe organizations like those we're honoring tonight. And it's our honor again this year to present the $100,000 William E. Simon Award for Lifetime Achievement in Social Entrepreneurship, named for the one-time Treasury Secretary, venture capitalist, and venture philanthropist, author of the best-selling book, A Time for Truth. I'd like to thank a number of people and organizations represented here tonight who make this evening and our program possible. First, from the J.M. Kaplan Fund, trustee Elizabeth Fonseca, representing both the fund and her late husband, Dick Cornell. Is Betty here? Also representing the Kaplan Fund are trustees Peter Davidson and Betsy Davidson, Pablo and Kina Fonseca, and Executive Director Amy Freitag. And from the William E. Simon Foundation, co-chairman Peter Simon, board members Amy Simon Bloom, Mary Simon Streep, Katie Simon, and program director Sarah Faye Snyder. From the O'Neill Family Foundation, Nick and Patricia O'Neill. And I'd also like to recognize my colleague with whom I divide the work of visiting and evaluating all our award winners. We really do go out there and check them out. That's Cheryl Keller. We'll be back following dinner to introduce our award winners. For now, please enjoy your meal. Before we begin to present this year's award winners, we have what I think you'll agree is a really, really special treat. We're going to look back at one of our previous award winners. We like to think that our award winners are helped by our award and they can continue to be in business, and this one really is. It's going strong, more than a dozen years since we first recognized them. The New Jersey Orators are an all-volunteer organization with chapters throughout New Jersey. It's dedicated to an old-fashioned idea that improving the public speaking skills of young people especially disadvantaged young people, can help open doors throughout one's life. We hear a lot about the problems in minority communities, and not enough about the efforts of mothers and fathers to build and sustain programs like the Orators. It's my pleasure to introduce New Jersey Orators board member Sandra Ivey, who will introduce, for your pleasure, 2 of the champion young orators from this year. Board member Sandra Ivey.
Good evening, and first and foremost, let me thank you for having us tonight. I was not aware I was going to be introducing 2 of our students, but I do thank you again for the opportunity. So I'm not going to be before you long, so without further ado, I'm going to start with Dion Bullock Jr.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, friends, and family. My name is Dion Buller Jr., and I'm a proud member of the New Jersey Orators Trenton chapter. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this year's Manhattan Institute's Social Entrepreneur Award Banquet. Over the years, and being surrounded by excellent mentors, I have gained a sincere appreciation for having good oratory skills and learning how to overcome adversity. I believe that overcoming adversity is one of the biggest hurdles we will face as we navigate our way through life. At this moment, I am so excited to be sharing a small portion of my speech written by me entitled Unstoppable. I chose this topic to enlighten, encourage, and remind my fellow orators of our inner strengths. Each time we overcome any adversity, for example, public speaking, we build confidence, we build character, we build resilience, and we finally become unstoppable. Without further delay, here are just some examples of how a few great leaders overcame adversity despite their challenges. First, Dr. King was definitely unstoppable when he managed to lead 250,000 people to Washington Mall without emails, text, or Twitter. He did not wallow in self-pity or get caught up in the why me, self-defeating mentality. He had a dream, and his perseverance of seeing that dream made into a reality is a gift that we should all aspire to obtain. Second, how is it possible to serve 25 years in a prison and become the president of a nation? Ladies and gentlemen, Nelson Mandela fought through the political turmoil in South Africa, and the more challenges he faced, his will and desire to achieve equality was strengthened. The more challenges he faced, his will and desire to achieve equality was strengthened. Even behind those steel bars, and while being mistreated and facing heart-wrenching personal problems, a black man emerged and became unstoppable. Thank you. Once again, my name is Dion Buller Jr., and this portion of Unstoppable is a piece written by me to my fellow orators to enlighten, encourage, and remind them of their inner strengths. If you want to hear more, please come out to the competition. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Marat, and I am a distinguished and dedicated member of the New Jersey Orators, Newark, Chapter 1. Today, I will be presenting to you What's in Your Hand by Reverend Dr. Adam Clayton Powell, Jr. And now for my presentation. I know here you're in trouble. It's said that about 30% are unemployed. That's why I'm working hard to get this surplus food here. Some of you say to me, well, I'm not like you. I'm not a congressman. I haven't got education. I haven't got work. But you're a human being. And you know what you've got? You've got in your hand the power to use your vote and to use even those few cents you get from welfare to spend them only where you want to spend them. Remember that. A young slave boy one day stood before the greatest ruler of his day. And God said to Moses, "What's in your hand?" And Moses said, "I've got this stick. That's all." And God said, "Well, let me use what's in your hand." And God used that slave boy with the stick in his hand to divide the Red Sea, march through a wilderness, bring water out of rocks, manna from heaven, and bring his people to the freedom land. What's in your hand? What's in your hand, George Washington Carver, who was so frail that he was traded for a broken-down horse as a slave boy? And George Washington Carver, while sitting in the science lab at Tuskegee Institute, said to me, "Dr. Powell," he said, "all I do is go out to the field each morning at 5 o'clock, and I let God guide me. And I bring back these little things, and I work them over in my laboratory." And that man did more to revolutionize the agricultural science of peanuts and of cotton and of sweet potatoes than had ever been done in the fields of agricultural science. What's in your hand? Just let God use you. That's all. What's in your hand? What's in your hand, little boy? All I've got is this slingshot. And the enemies of my people are great and big and more numerous than we are. Well, little David, go on down to the brook and gather up a few stones and close your eyes if you want to and pull back that slingshot and let him go. And David proceeded to kill the greatest enemy of his people, the leader of the giants. And suddenly, his people are free, just letting God guide a stone in his hand. And years later, David is a king. And God asks David, "What's in your hand?" And David said, "I have this harp in my hand." Then David, "Play on your harp." And David began to play. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. What's in your hand? What's in your hand, man hanging from a cross? I have 2 nails in my hands. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, whither shall I go? And that man with 2 nails in his hands split history in half, BC and AD. And what's in your hand tonight, people of Cambridge? You have God in your hand, that too, and he'll let you win because he's on your side. And one with God is always in the majority. So walk with him and talk with him and work together and stick together. And with God's hand in your hand, the victory will be accomplished sooner than you dreamed, sooner than you hoped, sooner than you prayed for, sooner than you imagined. What's in your hand? Good night and God bless.
Wow, talk about a hard act to follow. If you go to New Brunswick, New Jersey, to Trenton, to Newark, to Patterson, they are helping hundreds of young people learn to recite and declaim in just that fashion. It's just the greatest organization. Can you believe that? 2 other previous Cornell Award winners are with us tonight. From Glamour Gals, making it possible for young women to connect with the elderly, Susan Schultz. Are you here, Susan? And some of you may remember from several years ago a great performance by Gospel for Teens from Harlem, from Mama Foundation from the Arts in Harlem, Vi Higginson. Now, on to this year's Richard Cornell Awards for Social Entrepreneurship. You know, it may not be the best idea to start out by talking about dental care while some of you still may be having your dessert. But dental health is a serious subject, especially when it comes to poor children. The vast majority of the 46.9 million Medicaid-eligible children across America, in other words, the nation's poorest kids, never see a dentist at all. It's a situation that poses the risk that children will develop serious medical conditions because of untreated oral health. And that's because only a small minority of dentists even accept Medicaid patients. They say the government reimbursement rates are just too small. But that and protectionist legal barriers as well did not deter our first award winner, who joins us from one of the poorest counties in one of our poorest states. There, starting with a $300,000 grant from the Northeast Alabama Community Foundation, there is one, the Sorrell Dental Clinic set out to bring dental care to the rural South. And it was there that Jeffrey Parker, calling on his background as a top executive at Sara Lee and ConAgra, figured out that the efficiencies of social entrepreneurship, well, they can even make Medicare rates work. As a result, the Sorrell Dental Clinic now has 17 locations. It sees 175,000 poor Alabama children and their families every year. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who made it possible, from Anniston, Alabama, nominated by Frank Caladonato from the University of Florida College of Dentistry, Jeff Parker.
Thank you very much. I didn't prepare any remarks because I didn't know what Howard was going to say to me, because he warned me that he might let everyone know that if we used our nonprofit in the state of New York, I'd be a convicted felon. It's true. In 45 states in this United States, it's against the law to run a nonprofit dental clinic because I'm not a dentist. We had to overcome overwhelming odds. I'll tell you the quick story how it happened. I had retired with my beautiful wife at 40 from running big corporations, and I started a foundation. I sent 75 kids to school, so they made me a professor. I bought my way in. And they came to me one day and said, there's a nonprofit dental clinic in this small rural town that we want you to go take a look at that's seen about 600 kids a year on Medicaid. And I said, sure, I'll do it for $5,000 a day. And they said, no, you're not in business anymore. You're a college professor and you have to do pro bono work. And I won't repeat the words I said to myself. But I went down and took a look at it. And I'll tell you now, 10 years later, we've seen 850,000 children and never have had a single patient complaint ever filed against us. We have reduced the cost of care every single year from rampant caries, $328 per patient visit, to $111 last year. We employ full-time oral surgeons, full-time orthodontics, endodontist, pediatric dentist. We're the high-paying employer in the state. We're the largest dental practice in the state, and we do it off of Medicaid revenues. We have no debt. We have never relied on, except from our inception, cash donations or grants, nor do we use volunteers. We hire who we want to hire, and we hire the best and the brightest. I'm not a big believer in some of the programs that have to revolve every single year off of receiving grants. I think it's a great way to start a business. I'm a business person. It has to be sustainable. As a matter of fact, Sorrel Dental last year, this year we'll have revenues of probably over $24 million and make about $1.5 million profit, being the high-paying employer in the state and being the low-cost producer in the United States of America and providing dental care. We see, as I said, about 185,000 children this year in Alabama. It will cost us less than $300 to do so. That includes oral surgery, endodontics. They come back because we treat individuals like their son or daughter or brother and sister. We pay our dentists straight salaries. We turn down dentists now that want to work with us. And we have a remarkable group of people that have been able to do so. I'm very blessed to be able to work with the folks I have. I've been a CEO, as Howard said, of major corporations. I've been a college professor, and now I'm winding down now and not doing this because my beautiful wife has had to live in Alabama for the last 10 years. And being a California girl, as you can see her smiling, is not too thrilled about that. So now I'm unemployed again. We'll see how long that lasts. After my first retirement, it lasted about 3 months when she said, hey, you know, you're pretty young. You probably can go out and do some more things. So this has been about 3 weeks, and we'll see how long this lasts. But it's left in capable hands. In fact, the people running it were the students in my class that I handpicked. The point I'm trying to make is, if we can eliminate cavities among the poorest children and the poorest counties and the second poorest state in this country, and dental acts prevent nonprofits that can do this from expanding in their state because of dental practice acts, because I'm not a dentist, that's a national disgrace. To show how crazy it is, the University of Louisville Pediatric Medicine School asked me to run their pediatric medicine department, and now we're in Kentucky, and we're running pediatric medicine. Although in New York, Howard was not joking when he said he was going to say this, I would be a convicted felon if I was found guilty of practicing dentistry in the state of New York and 44 other states. The Dental Society has provided a monopoly. They won't let anybody do anything. We're reducing the cost of care to the government. We're seeing the children that nobody wants to see. We're the low-cost producer in the United States of America. yet we can't come to your state and 44 others. I thank the Manhattan Institute for bringing this issue to light. I thank you for recognizing our organization. And God bless all the children in this country that go to bed every night like Diamante Driver did in Maryland, who had an abscess in his tooth. And his mother called 21 dentists, and they would not see him because he was on Medicaid. That tooth abscessed and went to his brain. He had one brain surgery, he had a second, and he died when a $3 prescription would have taken, and a dentist would have taken Medicaid, would have been able to help that child. So a 12-year-old boy died because he was on Medicaid. That's what happens in our country, the greatest country in the world. Thank you, Howard, and others for bringing this to light tonight. I hope that makes you raise awareness and ask your dental societies in your state, why can't we do the right thing? Save the taxpayers' money and provide care for children. Thank you very much.
The idea of bringing good management practices to healthcare, I think that's supposed to be a good thing. If you'd been in the Rockaways in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, you might have seen a group of volunteers both getting their hands dirty with cleanup and using what looked like military-style mapping tools, documenting flood damage and helping homeowners jumpstart the incredibly complex FEMA process of getting assistance. Well, appearances did not deceive. These were Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who were part of something called Team Rubicon, the organization co-founded by our next Cornell Award winner. Jake Wood is a former Marine sniper. No one's made a movie about him yet. I'm serious. Inspired in part by the suicide of his sniper partner, he's built an organization that provides veterans a way to use the leadership and technical skills of the military and apply them in the aftermath of natural disasters, from Superstorm Sandy to the Nepal earthquake. It all began when Jake set out for Haiti and following the 2010 earthquake there and crossed his own Rubicon when he crossed the border from the Dominican Republic. At a time when veterans are so often portrayed as trapped by post-military adjustment problems, the growth of the organization he decided to start tells another story. Vets who were and still are called to service. Team Rubicon has signed up more than 30,000 volunteers. They wield both chainsaws and Palantir mobile handsets. There's one big difference, though, between Team Rubicon and the Veterans Administration. TR's nearly $10 million budget relies on zero government funding. Ladies and gentlemen, from Los Angeles, California, nominated by Caitlin Lehman, the founder of Team Rubicon, Jake Wood.
I also made the mistake of not preparing my remarks, and after the orators, it's a little bit more intimidating. I want to start by first thanking my lovely wife. Without her support and undying devotion, none of this really would have been possible. And then the lovely volunteers and staff members who are over here joining me at the table. Team Rubicon is an organization that truly has been built on the backs of volunteers and their passion for what we're trying to accomplish. This award is a little ironic because when we went to Haiti in 2010 following the earthquake and found ourselves in the worst hit areas of Port-au-Prince 4.5 days after that earthquake struck, we had no intention of being entrepreneurs, and we just wanted to help. I'd just gotten back from 2 tough tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. My co-founder had spent a couple of years in Iraq himself. And when we got down there, after about a week and a half of working mobile medical triage clinics throughout the city, we realized that perhaps the greatest irony was all we were doing was using the counterinsurgency principles we'd been taught for war to deliver humanitarian aid. So we came back and decided to build an organization based off of those principles and build a better mousetrap. And along the way, as was mentioned, we learned that the impact we are having on our volunteers, these men and women, 2.5 million of whom are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, the impact we were having on them was such that they were saying that this was the greatest experience they'd had since taking off the uniform, that they never thought they'd have that same sense of purpose or community or identity in their post-military lives. And that really came to hit us square in the face when my sniper partner, Clay Hunt, committed suicide in 2011. You know, the tragedy in Clay's suicide was that he didn't kill himself because of what happened to us in Iraq and Afghanistan, but rather because of what he lost when he came home. He lost that mission. And we knew that what we were building had the opportunity to provide that mission back to those men and women who were coming home and taking off the uniform, who were transitioning to civilian life in the tens of thousands. And so we set out to build an organization that could not just make our communities around this country more resilient by repurposing their skills, the skills that we spent a lot of money training them in for war, but could also provide for them a mission that would supplement their post-military lives, whether they were going out and finding careers and starting families. We could do that. We could solve both of these social issues with this one solution. And we've had success, and it hasn't been accidental. We're not trying to force this solution on anyone. We've had 32,000 men and women pick up that call to arms. We've responded to over 120 disasters around this country, and we truly believe that we've built a better mousetrap, that we can do this better than other organizations. And as we look out, you know, this doesn't stop here, right? We think the ceiling is very, very high for our organization. We know that there are communities that are impacted by disasters that we aren't currently responding to. We know there are hundreds of thousands of veterans who are transitioning every year that we aren't reaching. So what does that mean? How can we achieve our vision of an America in the future where veterans, as they're leaving the military, have an expectation upon them to go back to their communities of record and join the Team Rubicon in their community? A future in which, in times of crisis, communities look to their military veterans to lead them through it. How do we achieve that? We think we're building a reinvented, a reimagined 21st century volunteer fire department in every corner of every state of this country. And we need your continued help to do so. It's not a future that we're just imagining, it's a future that we're building every single day. And I want to again thank the staff members and volunteers, some of whom are with me here today, who are helping to make that a reality. Thank you very much for this award. I very much appreciate it, but we have a lot of work ahead of us. Have a great night.
If there's another hurricane, I know who I'm calling. It seems that every year we've presented these awards, one or more of our winners has anticipated an issue which later has moved to the forefront of public concern. This year, that issue is the question of how to help those who have gone to prison to build new lives and avoid going back behind bars. We have two winners who fit that description tonight. It's not a new problem for our next winner, Brandon Christou Ski. As a young man, he came close at age 19 to going to prison himself. It was a judge's decision to place him on 1 year's probation on the proviso that he get a job, which led to his first restaurant job, where, once he was taken under the wing of the owner, led him through a long series of unlikely steps, from learning how to poach and braise to his acceptance at the famed Culinary Institute of America, and then on to top chef jobs in Paris and here in New York. I'm not making that up. And now, in only slightly less glamorous Cleveland, he's founded a restaurant and a training program and a complex of buildings where that training occurs to provide a way for others to follow the path that he's traveled. As someone who had to take up such tasks as cleaning a kitchen stove with a Q-tip, he said that in the food service business, if you work hard, you'll always be employable. Today, just 2 years after it opened, Edwin's Restaurant is staffed by 25 ex-offenders And Brandon, himself the son of a Detroit auto worker, has been credited by Cleveland's newspaper with birthing one of Cleveland's best new restaurants on the back of unhirable ex-cons. But 61 of the 65 graduates of the program have already been hired in the food service business, and 0 have gone back to prison. Ladies and gentlemen, a man who bet it all on his dream of helping others, nominated by Chris Cole of Deloitte Consulting from my own hometown of Cleveland, Brandon Christou Ski.
Well, good evening. I want to thank everyone here tonight, first of all, for showing up. I'd like to thank Howard. Thank you for your long journey to Cleveland, the epicenter of the world. I would also like to thank the team that makes it all happen, our general manager, Jordan Levine, our chef, Jerry Grimm. This isn't possible all by yourself. But something I really am thankful for is the Manhattan Institute recognizing the spirit of that independence to change the world. It doesn't take an army to fix things. Well, in some cases, maybe it does. Remember that. However, it's a spirit. And like these two young men said at the beginning of tonight's meal, being unstoppable. What's in your hand? You truly can do anything you want to do. Twice I've been homeless, once divorced. The journey of a dream is never easy. These are the moments that always are fun because you get to eat filet mignon and walk home with a plaque. But it's that journey I don't think any of us will ever forget, when founding or just believing in something that's bigger than yourself. So I tell you, this is a great night and a proud night. At Edwin's, it's very simple how this all works. You give someone a skill, and you give them a little support, and the rest is history. What we do is we enable success. We're not pulling someone along, nor are we coaxing them into something that someone does not want to do. We're simply saying, here's a fair and equal opportunity, here's the way to achieve it, and we've got your back, no matter what that means. Whether that means a driver's license, whether that means food stamps, whether that means a home, we're going to make it happen, and we're going to make it happen with what we have. And so far, as Howard has mentioned some of these stats, we've had 90 graduates now. 98% are employed, 0 back to prison, which is great. Well, someone says, well, hey, the dentist guy, he touches hundreds of thousands of people, and he does. The spirit of Edwin's is statewide and nationwide. So someone who is incarcerated right now at this very moment could be sitting in their penitentiary in Ohio, has access to 20 hours worth of videos, a curriculum, a textbook that supplies hope. And that spirit is unstoppable. It's unstoppable. So I really tip my hats to all you tonight for nominating and actually believing in Edwin's. And I promise you, Howard, that we're not going to stop, and there's a lot more to do and to take care of. And an opportunity for a second chance, a fair and equal second chance is the most that we can offer. Everyone's got the right to happiness. Everyone's got the right to creativity. And everyone should have the right to a job that offers dignity and self-respect. So thank you again, all you here this evening, and I look forward to catching up. Cheers.
And by the way, if you're ever in Cleveland, it's in Shaker Square, Edwin's Restaurant. You won't go wrong. Are the Zagats in-house? Zagats, I'm sorry. We move from prison reform to another of the highest profile social issues in this country, immigration. Much of our discussion centers on border security, whom to admit. But our next winner knows that it's just as important for immigrants themselves and for the country as a whole, for newcomers to make the most of their talents, for themselves and for the country as a whole. It's a lesson she learned firsthand, in fact, well before she became a social entrepreneur. Maria Vertkin was herself a new American from the former Soviet Union. And so, when as a social worker, she saw immigrant women living in shelters and on public assistance, She looked for a better way and realized they all had a skill to offer, the language that they spoke. She learned that the world-class hospitals of Boston too often lacked somebody who could talk to patients in their own language and understand medical issues as well. Today, the organization she founded, Found in Translation, trains medical translators to learn enough about healthcare to explain to patients in their own language, be it Russian, Hindi, Somali, what they should know about their diagnosis and the choices they face in treatments. Graduates of this selective months-long program are now at work at top hospitals and health insurers where they earn an average wage of $21 an hour. That's a long way from public assistance. And the woman who forged the upward trail for them to take is the founder of Lost in Translation, nominated by Lori Lander of Many Helping Hands and Margaret Hastings of the Royer Family Charitable Foundation from Cambridge, Massachusetts, Maria Vertkin.
Thank you for the nice intro, Howard. Thank you all for being here. Found in Translation creates opportunity at the intersection of two problems. First, medical interpreting is a big, big problem, and it's also a legally protected civil right. And the shortage of interpreters affects all of us, not just the patients, but by making healthcare more expensive, more risky, it affects every single person, even if you've never immigrated. The second problem is that the best candidates to become medical interpreters are trapped in low-income communities where they don't have the money, where they don't have the support, they don't have the childcare, the transportation, the mentoring to actually make their dreams come true and become professional interpreters. So we take these two problems and put them together, allowing them to solve each other. So when people hear about Found in Translation, one of the first things that they ask is, why hasn't this existed before? Why is this the first time I'm hearing of this? Why doesn't this exist in my community? And it's a question that I've asked myself as well. I've wondered, when my family immigrated, why didn't we have something like this? And how different our lives might have been if we had. So this work is deeply personal for me, because I myself come from a low-income bilingual family who immigrated from Russia to Israel and eventually to the US. And in my experience, I think the reason no one has thought of creating a program like this is that we underestimate immigrants. We underestimate minorities. We underestimate women. We don't think to look at women, minorities, immigrants, low-income individuals to find some of the best talent in the countries for careers like medical interpreting, which is the fourth fastest growing profession in the US. And I can tell you from personal experience that when you immigrate, it's like having the reset button pushed on your life. And suddenly, overnight, you lose familiar faces, familiar places, you lose habits. But probably the biggest, most painful loss is the loss of competence, the loss of being an adult who is an active participant of society, who's able to contribute positively. When you come here, you may have had a skill set that suddenly you find is irrelevant. You might have had a degree that now doesn't mean anything at all. You might have been a surgeon back home, and you come here and you wash toilets for a living, and that's all that's open to you. And it's not surprising that the women that come into our program have developed often this view of themselves as not worthy, as not competent, and that, and this is something we've dealt with in our own family. And I have to say, a personal anecdote is that my father is probably one of my favorite people in the world, someone that I really admire. He's brilliant, he's an engineer, he's a chess master. But sometimes, when he speaks English, I catch myself thinking that he's not very bright. And I quickly correct myself. I do a little chiropractic adjustment of the mind. I say, no. I know this person. He's wonderful, and I admire him and respect him so much. And just because he can't express himself right now in this language doesn't mean there's so much behind there. But even I, his daughter, forget. And that is why I'm not surprised that no one has thought to look in the communities where we look for top talent, to find medical interpreters to fill one of the greatest needs our country faces right now in the medical sector. For us, this award means so much. Recognizing that this is a huge issue, and recognizing that when immigrants are underestimated, when immigrants are dismissed, it's not just their loss, it's all of our loss. Just like when I underestimate my father, it's not just his loss, it's my loss. And I want to challenge all of you to make this issue your issue. Just because when you go to the doctor, you can understand everything you're told, or probably not, actually, even in English. But imagine that in a different language that you don't speak. Make that your issue. Remember that when a patient goes to the hospital and their legally protected civil right isn't met, and they don't get an interpreter because there just isn't one, it's going to affect all of us. The patient, obviously, it can be deadly not to know what the doctor is saying, and then the risk of delays, readmissions, errors, raise the price of health care for all of us. And interpreters do a great job keeping those costs down. So make immigrant problems your problems. Make patient problems your problems. And when I meet people and they ask me consistently, why doesn't this exist? Why isn't this in my community? I want to be able to tell them that it's coming to your community soon. So if this is true in your community, I invite you all to join us and come talk to me about how you can help to make this possible here in New York or wherever else you're from, because everywhere we have poor communities where immigrants and people with bilingual skills are concentrated and can't get out to a training like ours, and everywhere we have a healthcare system that's struggling to find enough talented bilingual professionals to serve all the immigrant needs. Thank you so much.
Don't forget this. People wonder how do good ideas spread? That's how. We've recognized a program tonight that helps those who have been released from prison. Our next award winner has gone behind bars to prepare those still incarcerated for what one hopes will come to be a new and better life. Max Kenner first had the idea of bringing higher education to the incarcerated. I'll just say that again, higher education to the incarcerated, when he was still a student at Bard College in New York's Hudson Valley. It's no easy task to get permission even to go into prison when you haven't committed a crime. But Max succeeded in doing so, and today, 15 years after his first visit to the Eastern Correctional Institution, he's brought college-level education to inmates there. Funded entirely through private philanthropy, including key grants from the Episcopal Church and the Ford Foundation, what became the Bard Prison Initiative has become a true college-level program. Max not only convinced faculty from Bard and many other schools to teach at 7 New York prisons, he convinced Bard to grant degrees to the inmates. The Bard Prison Initiative can be thought of as a highly selective school. It takes only 1 in 10 applicants. They have to write essays. They have to be interviewed. It's enrolled 600 students, virtually all serious felons with long sentences, many imprisoned at ages starting at 16, many convicted of involvement in violent crimes. It's gone on to grant fully 350 Bard College degrees in the full range of the liberal arts, including history, literature, the sciences, quantitative reasoning, and mathematics. Those in its classes include members of the Bard Prison Initiative debate team, which this fall defeated the team from another somewhat selective college, Harvard. You can look for footage of that match in an upcoming film about the Bard Prison Initiative being produced by Ken Burns' Florentine Films. Ladies and gentlemen, nominated by Darren Walker, president of the Ford Foundation from New York, New York, the founder of the Bard Prison Initiative, Max Kenner.
Thank you, Howard, and everyone at the Manhattan Institute. Howard, you didn't tell me how many friends we'd have here. Jim Ottaway used to visit me when I had barely graduated from Bard and worked in a bathroom that had been converted to a closet, and that was our office for the first 6 or 7 years. And George McDonald and all our friends from Kaplan and Francie Campbell, it's really great to be here. I also want to thank one of my heroes, Darren Walker, for nominating me, and BPI for this award from the Manhattan Institute. When Darren, like you, Howard, came to visit Eastern, he saw a program and students that were accomplishing things that are impossible, according to social scientists in 2 fields, in criminal justice and in education. Saw people in long-term prisons who were not only certain not to go back to prison, who were leading the most productive lives they could as parents and citizens and neighbors and preparing to pay taxes, but also people who had gone from algebraic illiteracy, study calculus, and become majors in math, students who were studying the full breadth of the humanities and the arts, students who so enjoyed reading continental literature that they said, we have to read Hegel in the original. Can't we study the German language? And they did, and everybody laughs. But Du Bois did it, and Frederick Douglass did it before him. So why shouldn't these students, right? And again, we think so often, especially the social scientists, on the left and the right, of how to identify problems and make them less bad. But if we treat people with dignity and real expectations, sometimes they defy everything that we think is possible. So just to recognize the other 2 people I love here most in the room, Erica Mateo and Wesley Keynes, both alumni of Bard, AA and BA degrees. They symbolize, I think, just a few things before I wrap up. First of all, they are here representing hundreds of formerly incarcerated Bard alumni who are in graduate school, places like Yale, NYU, and Columbia, working in management and billion-dollar businesses, and most of all, like Erica and Wes, going back to the communities from which they came, serving youth at risk, serving people with HIV and AIDS, serving the homeless, people really doing the work where they're most needed. They represent to us who live in what we call a Christian society, a reminder that none of us can call ourselves empathetic or fair if we define other people exclusively by the worst thing they've ever done. And they remind us that through all our failures in the public sector, in education, and in justice, that these worst problems can be overcome, and they can best be overcome by the people closest to those problems. Thank you very much.
And now we turn to our evening's grand prize, the William E. Simon Prize for Lifetime Achievement in Social Entrepreneurship. We're joined, I want to say at first, by a previous Simon Prize winner, the founder of New York's best program for helping the homeless, needed now more than ever from the Doe Fund Ready, Willing, and Able program, George McDonald. Before we turn to the introduction of this year's winner, one of America's premier education reformers, Norman Atkins of the Relay Graduate School of Education, it's my pleasure to turn to the co-chairman of the William E. Simon Foundation to remind us of the meaning of his father's legacy. Peter Simon.
Thank you, Howard. As he said, I'm Peter Simon. I'm co-chair of the William E. Simon Foundation. And on behalf of the Foundation's trustees and staff, especially 2 of my sisters, Amy and Mary, and my beautiful wife, Janet, and our soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Katie Cole, who are here tonight, congratulations to tonight's winners. You are all really inspirational. Many of you tonight may not have had the opportunity to meet my dad. We all called him Bill Simon. I thought I wanted to take a minute to share a bit about him and why this prize for lifetime achievement was so important to him and named in his memory. Dad was a passionate man. He was ambitious. He was driven in everything that he did, everything. He began his career on Wall Street in the 50s with 3 children already. He served as Secretary of the Treasury under Presidents Nixon and Ford. He chaired the 1984 U.S. Olympic Committee. He headed the John M. Olin Foundation for 2 decades. He started multiple businesses, some of which I worked for. He authored 3 books, was a father of 7, and most importantly, put his deep religious faith into action. The charitable philosophy that guided him in establishing the William E. Simon Foundation drew upon what Andrew Carnegie wrote in The Gospel of Wealth, and I quote, "In bestowing charity, the main consideration should be to help those who will help themselves to provide part of the means by which those who desire to improve may do so," unquote. Dad was an entrepreneur through and through and had particular admiration for those working outside the bureaucracy of government to solve social problems, which is why this Lifetime Achievement Award was established. And boy, have we met some great examples tonight. So Norm Atkins, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes, is going to be introduced by a very distinguished guest, Paul Tudor Jones. And he'll share much more about Norm. And in his wonderful Southern accent, he told us he's going to shine his shoes pretty good. So I'm looking forward to that. But the William E. Simon Foundation is proud to continue to partner with the Manhattan Institute. You've done a marvelous job all these years, putting on a great show. The actual first event took place in this very room, and it just grows and flourishes, and the prize winners just get better. So I am honored to be here tonight to represent my family and to be part of this prize ceremony tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. As Peter said, to introduce the winner of the 2015 Simon Prize, we have with us one of New York's and the nation's premier philanthropists. As the founder of the Robin Hood Foundation, Paul Tudor Jones has led the way in bringing the rigor of private sector investment, at which he has excelled, to the philanthropic investments, which are his passion. As 60 Minutes put it in its profile of him, Paul Tudor Jones is a latter-day Robin Hood who invests in poverty programs with the hard-nosed business sense of Wall Street. Last year, Robin Hood directed $132 million to 210 of New York City's most effective poverty-fighting organizations. Among those who helped Paul design and direct Robin Hood in its formative years is the man whose subsequent career is of such importance and impact that we are recognizing him tonight as our Simon Prize winner. And now to introduce Norman Atkins, please join me in welcoming Paul Tudor Jones.
It feels a little bit like the Oscars, doesn't it? So many incredible people coming up here getting awards, but you kind of wonder, when's it going to end? Wait a minute. That's a joke. That's a joke. How many of you here have seen the Steve Jobs movie recently? Let me just say I saw it last week, and accepting the dysfunction of that man, I was struck by the similarities of maybe the most creative American of our generation and the person who's going to be our next recipient and possibly, I'm going to put it out there, the greatest educator of our time. Now, I met Norman Atkins back in the 80s when we were first starting the Robin Hood Foundation, and David Saltzman came to me and said, I have to have Norman Atkins as my co-executive director. It was absolutely brilliant. So I said absolutely. At that time, Norman was living a wonderful, idyllic life in bucolic Woodstock, New York, with his beautiful young family. And I thought, let's bring him to New York, become part of Robin Hood, and throw all that away, which he did. And he spent 7 fantastic years there. And I don't think it's an understatement when I say that the $2 billion that Robin Hood has distributed to people in need over that time was born on the very broad shoulders of Norman Atkins and his great friend David Saltzman. But after 7 years, as soon as charter legislation was passed in the state of New Jersey, at his heart, Norman is a teacher. And he left Robin Hood because he knew that education was the most transformative way to attack poverty at scale, went to New Jersey and started North Star Academy in Newark, New Jersey, which became the premier school in that state. Now, that was just the first of many schools that he replicated, and then he turned that into which he founded the Uncommon Network of Schools, which I'll get to in a second, but became, as is so often with Norman, just the start of a much bigger thing. I got to know Norman even more so in 2002 because he helped me start Excellence Charter School in Bedford-Stuyvesant, New York, along with David and Jabali Sawicki, who's here. And in 5 short years, that school was the #1 performing elementary school in the city of New York out of 543 elementary schools, serving 98% African-American boys. And any of you that have a boy, I have 3 daughters, we know what a challenge it is to be #1 of schools with all boys. Today, the Uncommon Network consists in 3 states, 44 schools, serving 14,000 children. More importantly, though, Uncommon has provided resources to over 1 million teachers. Now, it was the one thing I learned about being on the board of Uncommon was that when you're in the education business, pretty soon you have to learn how to talk like an educator, and that means that you finish every sentence on a high note, because when you do, it evokes aspiration, even when they look at you and say, your child is Satan. But Norman, being the visionary that he is and was, realized that he couldn't be as transformative as he wanted to by simply building schools. He had to do something bigger. And the place you had to start was teaching teachers, because you can't have a great student unless you start with a great teacher. So once again, he partnered with another bunch of great educators, and they started the first school of education in over 100 years in the state of New York, the Relay Graduate School of Education. Now, Relay, so far, has trained 1,700 teachers, 300 principals, and has served 250,000 kids. And now, Relay is in 8 different cities, new Relay universities, and has 10 more planned. It is growing literally exponentially. So that would be enough for more mere mortals, but of course, Norman's not a mere mortal. He saw that we still were only graduating 50% of our students in urban areas. We had to do more. So his obsession with helping people in need and righting injustice caused him to, again, with another great group of educators, start something called Zern. You will all hear of Zern very, very soon. Zern is a web-based K-12, will be a web-based K-12 curriculum that will be delivered over personal computers. Zern embraces teachers, and teachers must in turn embrace Zern, and they have, because to date, after just 2 years, Zern has reached over 140,000 students, 14,000 teachers, and has now just hit that synergistic acceleration phase. It's adding 10,000 students per week and growing geometrically. So, by my count, Norman, who literally is just a baby, has started 6 different organizations, all of which are huge difference makers in people's lives. Norman's a creator, he's a pioneer, he's an artist, he's a genius, but most importantly, he's the most humble person I know. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present to one of the greatest friends humanity has ever known, this year's recipient of the William E. Simons Prize for Lifetime Achievement in Social Entrepreneurship, Norman Atkins.
That was totally ridiculous. I feel like Albert Schweitzer should come out of the... wow. Jeff, Jake, Brandon, Maria, and Max, you guys totally inspired me. It's really amazing the things that you've created and are doing. I wish Duran hadn't left, because I think I wrote down that he said that we need to overcome the adversity of public speaking, which I hope to do tonight with your help. Also, Michael Marat, that kid is a 6th grader at Vailsburg Middle School, which is part of North Star Academy, one of the schools that we founded, which is really pretty amazing. I mean, for me, that's a total treat. He said, what's in your hand? And I think the future is definitely in his hand. Howard, wow, you were so enthusiastic about the work that we're doing. I'm really appreciative that you called this out, and even though this is totally embarrassing, I appreciate you. Manhattan Institute, founded in 1977. Turns out that you were right about 3 big things. 1, school choice does empower parents. Thank you. 2, when you open up a closed government-run bureaucracy like education, you will be amazed at the number of innovative public servants who will come forth to create new solutions to our vexing problems. Thank you for that. And 3, cities are great, and New York City is the greatest of all cities, and you embrace New York and the joy and health and importance of our urban center at a time when New York City was in hard times, and these nearly 50 years later, things are a lot brighter and better. Thank you for that as well. Peter Simon, I wish I knew your father, Bill Simon. It's a total honor to get an award in his name. My father, who was a registered Republican, was a huge fan of your father, and like your father, used to throw water in my face to get me out of bed in the morning. But more importantly, it's clear that your father was all about freedom and all about public service, and it's amazing. I wish my father, who died a couple years ago, could be here tonight, because he would have been totally honored. But my daughter, Shira, is here, and I'm really glad that you're with me, Shira. Ray Chambers, who was your dad's partner, told me that your dad taught us a lot about philanthropy. It's about getting measurable outcomes and return on investment. And the folks at the Robin Hood Foundation, Paul Jones and David Saltzman, understood that and learned that from your father, and Robin Hood's part of that legacy. It's funny the way Paul described it, because the way I remember it, I looked like the kind of character in Woodstock that would be outside picketing the Manhattan Institute and Bill Simon's businesses. I think Paul thought I was like a crazy fuzzball of a guy. It's amazing. It's amazing, Paul Jones, that you brought me in. I learned so much. From you. The word social and entrepreneurship, you understood the social part of it. It would have been very easy in 1987, when you did well, to have created a foundation only in your name, and you figured out how to make so many friends around New York and create something that's so much bigger than yourself. And that's why I think in the first year, David, our budget was like $1 million, and now it's about $130 million a year, and Robin Hood has given away $2 billion, I should say invested $2 billion in organizations fighting poverty in our great city. And you taught me, Paul, to take risks. Visited every soup kitchen, every homeless shelter, every program for people with AIDS in the city, and we started investing in things that other people wouldn't touch, and were willing to make mistakes to try to find answers to tough problems. And it's amazing the leverage of that experience. I've had the privilege to get to know a lot of other amazing philanthropists over the years. There's one other I'd like to single out. His name is Bob Howitt. And after I left Robin Hood, he wrote first a $6,000 check and then a $50,000 check so that I could found North Star Academy with a partner. And I think in the first year of the school, we were one of the first charter schools in New Jersey. We had about a $450,000 budget. And now the ecosystem of Uncommon Schools is about $250 million, mostly public resources to help poor kids around the Northeast. That was a good investment. So, lifetime achievement, weird phrase. I liked, Paul, when you said just a baby, because I feel like it's, hopefully it's half a lifetime. The achievement part's weird because this is totally a team sport. So I've had a great joy of working with so many phenomenal people. There are two in the room tonight. One is a woman named Julie Jackson, who is probably the greatest teacher and leader and school person on planet Earth, and found her 17 years ago to work with us. And then there's Mamie Hostetter, who's like the dean of deans, who's like the greatest teacher of teachers on planet Earth. And they're just two of the so many people that I've gotten to work with. So just a couple thoughts about how these organizations that I've been involved with might evolve in the next half of a lifetime. And then just a couple thoughts about what's around the corner. One, I think North Star Academy, there were a bunch of, the teachers union was trying to stop North Star from getting a new building. And there were 40 members of the union holding vigil outside of City Hall Planning Board a couple weeks ago to stop us. And I had just been thinking, we just got to get good schools for kids. I wasn't thinking that parents had to become activists. But 2 weeks ago, I watched 400 parents stream into City Hall in Newark and change the outcome of the vote. And I realized that not only were they accomplishing something in that moment, but that they had been empowered. And I think that one of the things that we have to do a lot better of going forward in our work is to empower our parents to take charge of this movement. Secondly, Uncommon Schools is just it's a network of schools, but they're not just individual schools. We're bigger than about 96% of districts around the country. And I think the work is not just to stitch together a great education for a bunch of kids, but to kind of point the way on how to do district right, how to create a great system of schools within public education. I believe that we have the possibility to do that. With respect to Relay, we are training teachers and principals for tomorrow. It's extremely practical. Folks are practicing and they're getting better and they're demonstrating the achievement of their students, which is phenomenal. The thing that I think we need to do next is to go out and build a giant recruiting mechanism. If we're going to have some kind of government legislation, it would be like a GI Bill for teachers. But beyond that, we ourselves have to go out and convince young people that teaching is the greatest job in the world and get the most talented young people to go into teaching and to change outcomes for kids. That's the work ahead. And Zern, it was mentioned before by Paul Jones. It's a digital lesson. I encourage you to go online, www.zern.org. You'll see Jabali Sawicki, who was mentioned earlier, is teaching online to these 140,000 students. We've got to figure out how to get great content online and change the model for teaching at scale. So four thoughts. One, innovation. You all, Manhattan Institute has invested in innovators. We've heard from 5 others tonight. We all need to go create new solutions to the challenges ahead. And the young people that we saw up here are just representative of the millions of kids who we need to make the entrepreneurs of the next generation, and we need to invest in them. 2, diversity. I don't have a policy solution. My friend John King, who was one of our colleagues at Excellence Boys Charter School that Paul mentioned at Uncommon Schools, is the first Secretary of Education who comes from being a charter school teacher, charter school principal, and charter school leader. John King has gotten us focused on integrating our schools. It is sad, 60-plus years after Brown versus Board of Education, that our schools are so incredibly racially isolated. I was a child of Brown versus Board of Education. I was put on a bus when I was 5 years old from a white neighborhood to a black neighborhood and had black teachers, incredible teachers when I was young, and that formed me and changed my life and the way I feel and the way I feel about things and look at things. We need to get out of our silos and be with other people, and we need to do that for our kids. I promise that was not a big government solution. 3, freedom. Freedom. We've got a lot of our kids pointed toward college in our best schools. I mean, poor kids in this country, about 8% of them will go to and through college. For affluent kids, it's about 80%. Our schools are around 55% and headed toward 75, 80% in the not-so-distant future. We've got to go create freedom for our kids by giving them the possibility of going to and through college. We also need to start to invent education for employment that's meaningful, that gives our young people true choice and freedom around going into jobs and careers in the 21st century economy. Vocational education is pretty much dead in this country, and we need to figure out how to make it better for all of our kids. And 4th, this is the last one, and this is the corniest, but it's totally heartfelt. Love. We need to express love more. We need to be more loving toward our students and teachers and communities and each other. There are 3.3 million teachers in this country. Although Relay has created a solution for training the next generation of teachers, that does not mean that only the teachers who we're shaping and creating are good. All 3.3 million teachers are expressing their love by getting in front of students on a daily basis, and we need to celebrate them, champion them, even as we're figuring out new and better solutions for how to train and develop teachers and how to build systems around the country. We need to hire teachers who pour their love into their students, because when teachers love students and have high expectations for students, students will amaze you and do amazing things. And we need to change our discourse. We are so incredibly nasty and disrespectful to each other on basic policy issues and political issues, and our kids are watching that and absorbing that, and it's gross, and it's really not meaningful, and we're not able to lead rewarding lives. It's not a policy solution, but it's probably something that everybody can do in their daily lives, and I will try to do more in mine. And in the meantime, thank you so very much for this incredible honor. Much appreciated.
That's what a social entrepreneur looks like. Please join me in saluting all of our award winners from this evening. And if you have the means or the inclination, I hope you'll consider supporting them. And we'll see you next year. Thank you so much.